Hello, welcome back to Gearhead Geeks, where today we're going to be working on the rear hub, or servicing the rear hub, of this very high mileage H2. The H2 has got about 74,000 miles on it, maybe even a little more, and the rear hub has been serviced using what I thought would be the best grease possible, so we'll see how that worked out, and we'll just go through this step by step so that it's easy to understand and you get a look at a single-sided swing arm on an H2. So we'll get to it now. Okay, the first thing you need to do whenever you're working on anything is to go on ahead and get everything cleaned up as good as you can. Blow it off with air, take a little bit of window cleaner and just clean things up. It makes it so much easier for you to see, and you're just working in grime is just not a good thing. Anyways, a lot of grime will fall off onto other parts that you don't want dirty. So clean things up first. So we're going to start with this clip. Now there's an identical one on the other side, and they're a little fussy to get off. But once you get them off, you can then unbolt both sides, or get the nuts loose on both sides. I've already taken off the clip on the other side. There's this little plate that comes off. We'll put this off to the side. So what we're going to do now is we'll get the rear caliper loose and just get things out of the way so we can take things apart. So to get the rear caliper loose, we just have a 6mm Allen, and we'll break this thing loose. Okay, and we'll break this one loose. Okay, away we go. So we'll get these guys off. Really can't get a powered impact in, so we'll just screw these up. They're fairly easy. And we need to replace the brake pads on this anyway, so we're going to do that while we're here. And that's a real simple operation. So rear brake caliper is loose. I'm going to remove the ABS sensor, the wheel speed sensor, and so I'm just getting it out of the way so that we don't have to deal with it. And that pops right out. There's a little insulating piece. Make sure everything's put away and clean. Put our tools to the side. So now what we have are these two giant 46mm sockets. And just one of the things when you get something exotic like this, or exotic for me anyway, is you need to have some of these tools. So make sure things are sturdy. And you get a socket on one side, and we get a socket on the other. Now, what I've noticed here is that these things have a tendency to come loose all by themselves. I mean, every time I change the rear wheel, I have to retighten them. And I'm not sure if that's a known problem with other people, but it does seem to be an issue here. Now, what I think I'll do here is I'm going to take an impact and get this other side off. Makes it a little bit easier. And, okay. Get the camera here. Loose. Give this a shot. And we'll hit it this way. And that spark. Okay, and a big washer underneath. So now we can remove the brake, and everything looks in nice shape. There's a nice seal in there. Everything seems to be nice. So the next thing we're going to do here, get this out of the way, is we're going to loosen up the the rear hub adjustment. Take these loose. Get some slack in the chain to make things a little easier. Big spanner wrench. I'm going to turn it. That tightens it. And this will loosen it up. So that loosened up everything. The chain's nice and loose. We can actually pull the chain off to the side now. So next, let's remove seems to be in nice shape, holding in nicely. There's a big clip that holds this brake stay onto the main hub here, and our hub is spinning nice and freely. And let's see if we can get the hub to come off. Oh, that's okay, that goes this way. So to do this, I need there's a small chain guard here. Let's do it. There's a 5mm. Holding that on. $5mm Allen with a 6mm 6x10 thread, and there's another one on the bottom here, which goes. And these got a little bit of blue Loctite on them so that they don't rattle out, and we'll be putting blue Loctite on when we put things back together. And there goes our piece. We'll get that all cleaned up. So now we can now remove the hub, and here is the hub on the H2. And still nice and clean and beautiful. And this has, you can make sure you see this hub has over 75,000 miles on it, and it's still pretty much like new. A little bit of, just a little bit of dirt, nothing serious. This is the cush drive for it. No wear on it that I can see anyway. All the way around, a little dirty. We'll get it cleaned up. And then here comes the other piece out of it. So we can now see the spacers in there, and everything has a little bit of corrosion from time, but for the most part everything seems to be in really good shape. There's no slack in there. So this will get all cleaned up. We'll clean all of this up. Everything is still nice and tight. Even after 75,000 miles, things are still in wonderful shape. Okay? And in here, if you look, and there are bearings in here, and they're just as smooth as glass. There's another big bearing inside here, and everything in there looks perfect. So let me go to the other side, and I'll take a clean piece of paper towel and just take a look and see how the grease looks from my last service. And a little dirt on the outside, but as far as the grease is concerned, it's still red and nice, so it is not bad. Needs a little cleaning in here. Again, there's a lot of miles on it. This is probably, I don't know, 30,000 miles. I guess I should have serviced it a little bit more often, but it doesn't really seem like it needs it. Everything is in really, really good shape. So with all of that, I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning, and we'll get this stuff cleaned up, and we will go ahead and put everything back together. Okay, so off camera, I cleaned up the hub and I cleaned up the disc brake a little bit, just squirted some super clean on them, took them to the sink and rinsed them off. So now we're just going to take some denatured alcohol, which I keep in these little laboratory bottles, and along with acetone and other chemicals. This way I don't have to putz around cleaning, putting on caps, taking off caps. I can just squirt on what I want and be able to use it. So we're just going to go around and clean some things up, make sure the seals and everything are nice and clean, the insides of the bearing, anything else that looks like it's got some dirt on it. Now I'd already blown this off a little bit to clean it up, but it's really not that dirty. I usually try to keep things pretty clean here. I'm going to go to the other side and just wipe a few things off. Get the seal nice and clean, make sure there's no goop or anything else going on in there, because we are going to come back with some grease and start to reassemble things. Now, with that being said, our main axle is cleaned up, and this is just nothing more than taking and squirting a little bit of super clean on it and rinsing it off and blowing off all the excess water. We've got that. Our brake is all cleaned off. Any kind of brake dust is all gone, all cleaned up. Got everything cleaned up in there. And our cush drive, the same thing. Everything is clean, nice. All the seals cleaned up inside. Make sure there's no excess water or anything else floating around in there from the cleanup. And I'll take even a little bit more denatured alcohol and just make sure everything's cleaned up and nice. It's just, this is really nice and clean. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is get ready with some grease, and there's a bearing on the inside, or a roller bearing on the inside that needs some grease. And I've been using this Mobile One synthetic, and after 30 some odd thousand miles, I mean, this stuff doesn't do anything bad that I can find. So I'm just going to go pack the roller bearings with some grease. Make sure it has plenty in there so that there's not going to be any issues in the future, because I ride this bike a lot, and even though it's got 75,000 miles on it, or more than 75,000 miles on it, it's going to get a bunch more. We're going to be working on some supercharger gears, and we're going to go through and replace the cam timing chain and the supercharger chain while we're at it. It's just got a lot of miles on it. May as well just do a good job. So that's all greased up. I'm going to put a coat of grease on everything that has anything moving. There's a nice thin coat of grease on the seal. So the next thing we do is we take a bit of grease and we just make sure the threads have got a little bit on there. All the splines need to make sure that there's just a little bit of grease on it. You don't want it dry. It doesn't do you any good. And this is a fairly simple operation. Just make sure that it's got a good coat of grease on it. Now, one thing I will do is I'll put some extra grease on where the roller bearing rides. Although there's a whole bunch of grease in there. I'm greasing the inside of this. Now, the only reason that you do that is it doesn't need grease, but what the grease does is protects it from any corrosion. And that's really what you want to do. You don't want anything in there because water will find its way through. Whatever moisture in the air finds its way through, and it will cause issues. So this is fairly simple. Now we can take this guy, and we can't go this way with him because he only goes in one way. So he goes in from the other side. And he sits right in there. Okay. There's a spacer. It goes in there, and we'll get some grease on it. It's just been cleaned again with super clean, nothing fancy. And we'll put that in. And that goes in between the seal and the hub. Okay. So now the next thing to go in is going to be our brake rotor, and I'm putting a small amount of grease just where the seal rides and a little bit of grease on the splines. Again, we just want to make sure we have it so it's mostly corrosion proof. That's what we want. And I'm trying to keep my hands off the rotor. We're going to clean it, we're going to put in brake pads, but I just want to keep as much of the grease off of there as possible. And we put that on, and it's just that simple. Now, there's a washer. Goes on there, and there's a nut. And we'll just thread that nut on there. And that, it's got the rear hub all greased up. Now for our next trick, we'll go in and we'll put on our push drive on the other side. And it's fairly simple, same basic routine. This just slides on. And then the washer. And the nut. Okay, so everything's in place. As far as the hub is concerned, it still needs to be torqued, and there's a specialized torque sequence that goes along with this. It's and we'll go through all of that. Just make sure everything's all in there nice and clean, and the rear hub is serviced. So now that everything is clean, it's time to torque this down. There's a specific torque sequence for this rear hub, and it's a little bit strange, but it needs to be done. What you need to do is you torque it down to 162 foot-pounds, and then you break it loose, and then you retorque it to 188 pounds. So we will do just that. We've got a nice big accurate snap-on torque wrench, and we will be taking our 46 millimeter socket, and we will go on ahead, and it's a little awkward, but we're going to go on ahead and torque this down using both these wrenches. to 162 foot-pounds. Make sure everything is nice and solid when you do this. And here we go. Just a little more. Sorry about that. Had to wait for the compressor to quit making noise. And we will continue on with our 162 foot-pound torquing sequence. And here we go. Well, it's getting there. Full of muscle doing it. A little awkward. Okay, 162 foot-pounds. Now, we're going to break that loose. To get them positioned here a little bit. It's a little awkward, but we'll get it. Well, maybe. Here we go. Okay, here we go. And now we can break it loose. Okay. And now we'll set this to 188. Okay. We've got our torque wrench set to 188, and away we go. Get it in the right direction. Get a good foothold here, and again, it's a bit awkward. Make sure the sockets are on there, because you're going to be pushing really hard. And 188 foot-pounds. Okay, now that that's done, there's some clips that need to go in, and the way you find that is there are holes, and you got to find the one that lines up with the side you're working on. And what you want to do is this turns this way, so you want to have it so that it's winding it on. So we'll turn this around until we find a hole that looks like it lines up. And it looks like this one here lines up. Yes, it does. And you just slip on the clip. And we'll do the same thing with the other side. As soon as I find the clip, I have it here somewhere. Uh-oh, it may have fallen into a black hole. Oh, there it is. Nope, didn't fall in. But it could have. Okay, and again the same thing. So it winds on, we find a hole over here that lines up. This one lines up, and you clip it on. Okay, and we are ready to finish up servicing the chain. But first, we need to change our brake shoes, brake pads, excuse me. So let's get down to that. I have a brand new set of EBC pads here, which EBCs are just fine. So what I do to change pads, the first thing you need to do is the only way the pads are going to fit on is if you have room for them so the disc can fit in between them. Well, with the worn out pads, the brakes have been pushed together, and if you were to put the new pads in, you'll never get it back over the brake rotor. So the best thing to do, and it's very, very simple, is with the old pads inside, because this is what you're going to be pushing against. Take a couple of screwdrivers and just push the pads back out. And it's ready at that point to take on the new brake pads. So to do that, the first thing we need to do is there's a little tiny clip. If we can see, let's see if I can get it so you can see it. There's a little tiny clip right here that needs to go away, and you pull it out. Nothing fancy. Okay. There's a pin that gets pushed in across, and it can be a little stubborn sometimes on the rear. Yeah. Push on that, and what happens is it gets a little dry in there because, well, the brakes are just heating up and doing their thing. So what you need to do here is just get this pushed out of the way. Maybe. Yeah, let me just tap on it. And it's going. It looks like it is. Get a smaller screwdriver here that I can work with. Maybe I can just tap with this. Okay. And now, let's see if we can get this guy out of here. And he's coming out. Very good. Okay, so now I'm just pushing on this a little bit. And the pin's coming out. Maybe. Okay, and what I did is I was pushing down on this spring a little bit. And this needs a little bit of cleaning. Here's our brake pads. Now, some pads have something on the back, and that's to stop any kind of weird vibration going on, and these pads are no exception. So these are all fairly clean inside already because I've been cleaning on things. So let's take a look at this pad. Let's see if this backing comes off. And I have to make sure this may not be a... Oh yeah, it comes off. I'm not sure what kind of pads these were. These may have been Brembo. I'll have to look. These might be Brembo pads. And then we'll go in and let's open up our other pads. And we'll put on our little plate. And this just goes like this and like that, and that's it. And now there's a little arrow that must be facing front. Okay. And same with this one, we just need to pry it loose a little bit. And let's get our other pad out. And it only seems to fit in one way. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this one in, and so this one's facing front, so that would be this one going like this. This one goes like this. Okay, so now what we need to do is there's a spring that goes in here. Well, what we're going to do first is clean this up a little bit. This pin is a little crusty, so, and it needs to be able to slide. And so what we're going to do is, I've got some brake grease over here. I'm going to put a small amount of brake grease on it. And basically this is just some synthetic brake grease that you get at any of the auto parts stores. There's nothing too special. And we'll just kind of throw some on there. Very, very light coat so that things fit in there and the brake pads can slide. Okay. Now, what needs to happen is this pin goes in this direction and it gets started through our pads, if you can see that. Whoop. Gets started through our pads, and the spring fits over the top, and the pads keep on falling out here, but that's okay. So what you need to do is push the spring down so that it catches the pin, and get the pad back in, and continue doing that. You need to push this down, and it comes on through, and pushing on that spring, it should push on through. Now we may have to tap it a little bit just to get it on through to the other side. A little heavier than that. Okay, tapped in. Okay, and then the clip goes back on. Find our clip. Now there it is. And we'll push the clip on. And we are done. So now, get your pads into their position. Get them spread out and pushed up against the backing. And now we will take a little bit of blue. It looks like that these were held on. Get this out of the way. Get our bolts ready to go. Wherever they went. We're right here, but again, things fall into black holes around here, so we have to be real careful with that. I'll be back with some. Okay, we've got some blue Loctite here, and we're going to use that on these brake caliper bolts because they both came with some. These are all cleaned up. I'll just give it a little drip, and we'll do the same thing to the other one. Okay, and now we can thread these two guys into the caliper, and then we'll torque them down. And the manual says that we need to torque the rear caliper to 20 foot-pounds. So we'll get it in place, get it started, and we will torque them down. And again, these pads need to be spread apart a little bit because they just need to sit where they need to. And there it goes. Okay. And they're sitting in place. And we'll do this by the Braille method. Maybe. Yep. There's one. And here's the other. Okay, so the caliper is in place. We'll get it screwed in. And we've got our torque wrench set for 20 foot-pounds. Okay. And use a 6mm Allen driver and put the on position, and here we go. And 20 foot-pounds. Now we can go on ahead and put on our ABS sensor, and it was It doesn't go in any particular way. And the thread is here. Get it started. And this one is supposedly 16 foot-pounds. She will use this. Makes it a little easier to get in there because it's a little tight. Actually, it's 5mm. Okay. And that's good right there. Just need to have it solid. Okay, so we've changed our brake pads. We've serviced the rear hub. And everything is where it should be. Everything is nice. We've got brakes. And we are good to, pretty much good to go. We can put our rear wheel back on and we'll be good. Okay, now that the hub is all greased up, our brakes have been replaced, we need to do a little bit of cleaning on the brakes, and then we can put the rear wheel back on, put the chain back on, adjust everything, and get it all done. So first things first, we'll get the brakes cleaned up. Using just a little bit of brake cleaner, and we'll get a fresh paper towel. And we'll spray some on this and just clean up this disc a little bit on both sides. Make sure that all these handling and everything else we've done, and everything is all cleaned up and nice. And they weren't too dirty, just a little bit of stuff on them. Okay, now that that's done, we can go ahead and put on our rear wheel. In our last video, we went on ahead and we changed the rear tire, and if you need to see that, we did that with a Rabicon the tire changer, and this one we're just going to be putting it back on. So here we go. And all we have to do is just push it on now. I need to jack it up just a little more because the old tire is a bit worn, and this will bring it up a little more. And that should be enough. There we go. And the wheel's on. And we have some washers to go on first. The nuts. And that will be the socket. And we'll just be using this impact driver to run these down gently. Okay, now that they're run down, we need to torque them. So we've got the torque wrench set up to, well, it'll show up here in a second. There we go. And we've got the torque wrench set up to 80 foot-pounds. And I'm going to lower this down a little bit so that it can have a little traction. Okay, so now torque them down. All we need to do is we can use our rear brake. Hold on to the rear brake. Started. And we'll just lower it down until it touches. And that will allow it to torque. Alright, that hopefully is enough. And now we can go on ahead, get everything out of the way, and in a star pattern. And make sure everybody's torqued. Okay, all torqued up, ready to go. We will bring it back up and put on the chain. Okay, and as with everything, what we're going to do here is clean up a few things. Make sure that while the covers are off, we can actually get at things. Well, this is really not all that dirty. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to roll the chain back on, and that's relatively simple. You just take it, get it started, and give it a little bit of a twist, and the chain is on. Nothing to it. We just have a whole lot of slack. Okay. So how do we deal with all this slack? Well, the way the H2 adjusts is there is an eccentric hub in here. The hub we've already serviced inside, but it sits off center in the center of a bigger hub. And all that you have to do to tighten up the chain and get it the right slack is we use something called a spanner wrench, which is this wrench right here, and that spanner wrench hooks into some grooves behind here, and you just give it a turn, and as you can see, the chain tightens right up to where we need to be. And we take and we lock down that eccentric with a 10mm Allen driver, and we work on both sides, get it tightened up. And then you have to make sure that both sides are tight, because when you tighten one, the other one loosens a little bit. Okay, until we're both evenly tight. And our chain is now adjusted. Okay, the next thing we want to do is let's just give it a bit of a clean and lube. Now, what I do to make things easier, I just go on ahead and cover up some parts here so that they don't get sprayed down with chain lube. Is I use Maxima chain wax. It seems to do a very, very good job of keeping chains covered and just lubricated enough. O-ring chains have internal lubrication. You don't get to go on ahead and re-lube that, because it's all sealed inside. What you do have to do is protect the outside of the chain, and the best way to do that, in my opinion, without making a big mess, is to use chain wax. So here we go. We'll just go on ahead and give everything a nice spray. Get it nice and wet. Now we're going to do something a little different than most people do, and the reason I do this is I like to keep a nice clean chain. But how do I do that? Well, the best way for me is to take the chain lube that you're going to use, soak down the chain real well, and go on ahead and just wipe it off. Just run it with a paper towel or whatever you're going to use, and wipe off the chain and wipe off that wax or whatever the lube is. When you do that, the lube itself has got the actual solvent that it used to carry it, and when you have that, it breaks down the chain wax or whatever lubricant you have, and it allows you to clean it. And now I should have done this first, because the slop is pretty good at this point. Sometimes the chain will loosen up a little bit, but in this case it didn't. So now we've wiped off our chain, and now we have a nice clean chain, and we can re-lube normally. Alright, so that's all done. Chain is clean, lubed. The hub has been dealt with. I'm going to go clean this up with a little bit of super clean, because it's a little bit ugly at the moment. It's got some just dirt from road grime, and I'll be right back. Okay, now we're all cleaned up. All the road grime is gone. So now what we need to do is put a little bit of Loctite on these two bolts. A little bit of blue. Just a drop. And we'll put that in. Okay. And we'll take this and get it in the hole, and we'll take our Allen driver and we will get it started. This is 5mm. Well, maybe there we go. And we'll just get it started and on its way in. And we'll do the same thing to the bottom one, which is a little bit trickier because it's a little harder to start, but maybe. And it's going in now. So we'll just take our driver. I like these long snap-on ball head Allen drivers. They really make it easy to work on almost everything. They've got really, really good grip into the head of the bolt, and they are just long enough to make everything a lot easier to work with. And there one's good and tight. Now we can do the front one. Okay, nice and tight. So the only thing left to do is check the pressure in the tire, and we are done. So now what we have to do is we need to get the tire up to its proper pressure, or down to its proper pressure after changing it, because we never really checked it. So I'm going to do that right now. And our gauge is showing about 30 pounds. Now, the pressure needed for this tire is 42. At least that's what the factory recommends. And start with the factory recommendations, and if you need a little more traction, go ahead and drop the tire pressure a couple pounds if you need to. Never go above it, because it really doesn't help. It just helps wear out your tire. But sometimes on a track day, especially if it's going to be hot outside, you may want to run a couple pounds less so the expanding air doesn't get your pressure too high. So now, nope, not there yet. Just a little more. And that's at 42 pounds. Okay, we'll put the cap on. So the next thing is to put on our pipe. And it's right over here where I put it down. And yes, this is the stock pipe. And there's a bolt and a nut. Let me move the camera around so you can see. There we go. Alright, so now the pipe is on and it's just loosely hung in place. So the next thing has to be done is we clamp down the pipe. What we're going to do is tighten the nut on the upper bracket just enough to where it's finger tight, and the pipe still moves around. You can see it moving. And what we want to do here is tighten up this bolt right here so until the pipe quits moving around. You think, oh yeah, it's oops, sorry about that. Camera took a little bit of a hit. Okay, so now we're going to tighten this guy up. Until we can't move the pipe around. See, it's still loose. We're getting close. It's still just a little tiny bit loose, so we're right there. Then now we can finish tightening it down until it just tightens up to where we can't move it. And that would be right about there. Okay. And then all that we need to do is take a 6mm driver and wherever that went, there it is, and a 12mm wrench and tighten it down. Let's see if we can see that. And yeah. Take that. Tighten it down. And our exhaust is in place. All we need to do now is put on the covers. So going back to that, we'll take the bottom cover and whoop, we lost a bolt here. Oh, probably fell into a black hole. Oh, there. Alright, so now what we need to do is look and see which way it goes on. And if you look, you can see, let me get that out of the way, that this bracket goes that way. So it indexes into the pipe over here. We just have to kind of go by the braille method. And it goes in, and it kind of snaps into place. And there is a screw or bolt and another little bolt that hold it in place. Let's see if we can get this guy started. Well, maybe. Well, maybe not. Gloves don't make it any easier to start some of these finer threads. Oh, there it goes. Okay, we'll just take our long Allen driver, if I can get the glove out of the way, and screw it right in, get it tight, put this one in, get it tight. Now we have another cover, and it has its little bracket. Goes the other direction, so you just take it, slide it till it gets inside of the rubber piece, and there is a screw that holds that on, and we just get this lined up and get it started. Again, using our Allen driver, and it's tight, and that is the job done. Well, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Get these gloves off. I know that an H2 is not a common motorcycle, but it is a single-sided swing arm, and a lot of bikes do have single-sided swing arms, and the idea is it's basically the same thing. But at least you get to see the internal workings of it, make sure everything is greased, make sure everything is clean. This is a fairly simple operation on H2. It's a well-designed motorcycle. So anyway, again, hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.